me okay? Is the microphone working? Is that fine? Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. We've got a fantastic panel and discussion lined up. I'm sure there's going to be loads of questions. So I've already got loads of questions as well, but we'll try and rattle through things. Just introducing people, really lightly. You can see the names behind there. We've got Joe Goldberg. He's promised me that he's going to step up and Will Smith me if I don't call him Joe, unlike what it says behind there. So I'm pretty sure that doesn't mean we're going to be getting jiggy with it. So I'm not going to make that mistake, hopefully. We've also got, next up is Sarah Salter, who's Global Head of Applied Innovation at Wavemaker. And then we've got Ali Humphrey, Marketing Director at Stella Artois. And finally, Dallas Wiles, Co-CEO of JC&Co. We're going to go into it by starting with limiting what the panel can say, first of all, because this is a big question that we're going to get into the meat of, which is about the fundamentals of marketing. But the question is, are we losing sight of the fundamentals of brand marketing? And I just want the panel just to one-word answer it, first of all, before we get into the meat. So we'll start with Joe.
I don't think we've lost...
One-word answer. First of all, yes or no?
Partially.
Oh. All right, this is going to be interesting. Sarah, please.
I've got to steal from Joe, partially.
Yeah, I live for the grey. I'm going to go partially.
Dallas doesn't sit on the fence.
Yes, no.
Okay, all right, let's get into it then. All right, the first thing I'd like to say is, if we were writing a book on this, we've got to agree what the fundamentals of marketing are. So I think if everyone can just throw some things out there, Joe, you can start. What are the fundamentals? What should be in that book? What should the chapters be?
Well, I think for me, marketing is about your full mix. And I think we've heard just in the session previously about increased transparency in your brands and your organizations. And so for us, like as a service brand, I think your brand is about what it is inside the organization as well as what it is outside the organization. So your people matter as much as your product. And it's about, therefore, organizing your business around central principles which you are consistent in how you communicate them. Again, both internally and externally, through product, through communications, through customer experiences, through user design.
Great, good answer. So we've got people, product, principles, user design. Sarah, anything to add to that?
I'd probably evolve some of those, given, innovation to experience, to omni-channel, to being everywhere, and most importantly, probably now community. I'd say those are probably my three evolutions.
Nice. Ali?
I think, what is brand marketing? And I Googled it the other day and it cracked me up because I don't think Google even knows. And I remember when I first started in marketing, I thought my job was to make people fall in love with my brand, which now I look back on, I think it's kind of cute that I thought that. And, it is one of the factors, but really, for me, the role of brand marketing is to create sustainable value in the long term for your business, whilst also not being a dick and being socially aware. And I think once marketers make that shift, that is actually their job, then you get the respect of your peers. So for me, that is kind of my brief, my mission. And then from that flows the 4 Ps, which have been around for donkeys, but I don't believe they're broken.
Okay, the classic Ps. And finally, Dallas.
It's slightly different for me. I don't see myself as a media owner nowadays. I see myself as a brand owner. And COVID taught us that. As an out-of-home business, we were penalised 50-60% of our revenue. Short-termism was important to us, take as much as we can during those periods. But we could have done 2 things. We could have just paused and done exactly the same as we exited COVID into the new different, or actually think of how we can create different things. And I think the one key point, and hopefully some of you were when Chris Hunter, the bomb disposal expert, started earlier today. He said one thing that I think resonates with brand marketing. Learn the trade, not the tricks of the trade. And I think we've all got involved in the tricks of the trade. Let's really learn the trade. And I think the Asahi brand manager, apologies for any conflict there, said yesterday, everyone says 60-40, but what does that actually mean? Everyone uses the phrase 60-40, but no one's proven it. And I know we're going to discuss some of those points a little bit later.
We absolutely are. So, I mean, 60/40 probably represents this brand versus performance kind of split, if we're talking about it crudely, for those that don't know 60/40. But everyone knows 60/40 a bit too well, I think. So we're all becoming more digital. So digital is dominating everything. And there's no denying that the acceleration of digital is changing, potentially, some of these fundamentals. What would you say is some of the good changes that digital is bringing in terms of the fundamentals? What is new that is becoming a new fundamental in because of digital that we need to pay attention to? I'm looking at Sarah because she's got innovation in her title, so I know she's got a lot of opinions about this.
Is digital innovation now?
Well, that's the thing. I think a lot of digital is becoming the fundamentals, but what new in digital are you going to argue should become more of the fundamentals, should be changing what the fundamentals are?
Yeah, I mean, I think with, certainly the acceleration of digital and, the term Metaverse, which it only took me a minute to mention, I think what we're going to start to see is, it's always typically been brand first, right? And now it's community first. And I think we're going to start to see this become more and more central, that community people are taking the power away from brands. So I think that's going to be really key. And I also think, as we start to think, we talked on the 4 Ps briefly, when you think about place, typically what a P has meant with place is a place to go, a destination to buy a product. And I think what we've started to see is essentially that be everywhere rather than place. And digital and physical, is merging, essentially, and is giving us that full funnel to be able to drive that experience from beginning to end for the consumer. And so I think that's where it's changed. It's no longer around marketing the product per se, but it's around marketing that whole experience.
And so Joe, I think you're going to have a lot of opinions on this because for one, we've mentioned Metaverse, and I haven't seen any Santander banks in the Metaverse yet. But I don't think I've seen one in my high street in a long time either. So what is your opinion about this digital transformation?
Look, Metaverse and digital transformation aren't the same thing, right? So digital transformation is about the fact that sales channels in themselves are disaggregating, right? And to the point around control, I think the idea that brands had control in this kind of monologue era is an illusion. Consumers have always had control. What they have now is more information, and not all that information is good information. Some of that is very bad information. So actually, we all have less control because there's no quality control on the information out there. That's one thing. Digital transformation is about how your business is going to perform in the digital world. And for us as a bank, that's all about the fact that it's very easy now for new entrants to come into our market in a way that it wasn't before. And they can just slice off tiny bits of the banking sector and take our revenue, take our customers. It's now way more common for people to have multiple bank accounts than it was 10 or 15 years ago. We talk about a primary bank account user. What does that even mean? So digital transformation is about the fundamentals of business. Metaverse is a channel, right? And we don't know whether it's going to be a useful channel or a good channel. But that's no different to when radio was invented and then TV and then the internet itself. I think the realities are that it's always been the job of marketers to find a way to fundamentally make people aware of, hey, we're here, hi everyone, this is our brand. To then try and drive some sort of connection and meaningful differentiation. Oh, we're the brand that's a bit more blue and the other one's a bit more red, so you just know the difference. And channels just make that job harder for marketers, more complex. But also there's more opportunities, and there's more opportunities for new entrants to get into, because in some respects it's going to be cheaper to get onto these channels than it has been on TV or radio traditionally. I mean, I think the last thing I'll say, you've only got to remember that Procter & Gamble, like the master of brand creators as a FMCG conglomerate, had a whole department dedicated to creating soap operas. And that's how they got their message to market. The idea that you would do that today is crazy. And it feels like unbelievable that that's what P&G did. But that was the way they got the product to market. Now we'll see new innovations. There'll be new opportunities in the Metaverse. Who knows what opportunities that will do to present to brand marketers to tell their stories in different phenomena.
So I'd like to bring in Ali on this because, so beer as a category is incredibly well branded. and has had some, incredible long-term brand success stories. Everyone knows the beer ads, the Guinness, the Stella Artois, everything. We're probably undergoing a lot of change with lots of new brands coming up, and you're probably launching lots of new brands all the time. How has digital affected the way in which you're seeing kind of branding today? Is there anything that's really changing the way you market?
I think it's just taking the same principles, which is how are people going to interact with your message and what's the context behind it, and then thinking through, a bit of behavioural science. For example, in digital, anywhere, I always talk about when we're creating a TV ad, guys, if our ad stops someone in the ad break from going and getting their biscuit, we've achieved success. Like, you just need to understand, the environment with which you operate. So I think for digital, there's obviously the principles of make sure your branding is there and the opening seconds, etc. But it's like anything. I really like that quote that you said. You just need to know, you need to be curious, you need to understand the platform that you're advertising on, then understand how the people are also interacting with it, and then adapt your message.
And it's just on the whole kind of short-term, long-term thing, because like buying a beer or drinking a pint tends to be, or has traditionally been, quite an impulsive thing. But you are moving more D2C. Has digital changed, given you more means? Has it changed the way people are consuming the products?
Yeah, I mean, you've obviously got the likes of Deliveroo, Uber Eats, etc., and that's a portion of society that chooses to order their beer that way. The company that I work for has just launched something called Bees, which is business to business. Very successful in countries like Brazil, etc., where it's very consolidated and it's an opportunity to bring everything together and service the needs of businesses. Whereas here, it's a slightly different market because it's less consolidated. Yeah.
Great. Okay, Dallas, please. So with everything...
Can I just go back onto the Metaverse piece?
Absolutely.
See, I see it slightly different. I think there's two fundamentals. There's the Metaverse and there's the Outerverse. Right? Everyone is always saying we're happy to see each other, the real world, those real world experiences which we're all experiencing today. And I think we've spent 2.5 years of looking down. We all need to start looking up. And I'm not saying that out of home is the be-all and the end-all, but that's public media. You can't tell lies in public, unless you may be in the Commons, but you can't tell lies in public. And I think there's a good synergy now in that 60-40 theory. I think there's an opportunity now. Mm-hmm. Get those real-world experiences, creativity, engagement, getting brand fame again in out of home, but then amplifying it slightly further in digital channels. So I see Metaverse and Outerverse working in synergy for the future. And I think if we can get that right together, it would only make brands even more famous than they were maybe in the past.
Great. So I was going to come on to you as well, because when we're talking about digital, traditional media is transforming. Yep. It is doing more full funnel. Everyone's trying to get in on the digital thing, the programmatic, the long line of potentially small advertisers out there that amount to something quite substantial. How do you think, where do you sit on it at the moment? Because you're selling everything, even though you are an outdoor medium, you're doing it in a digital way as well. Yep. And where do you sit on this kind of the fundamental question about what traditional media can do now in the digital age?
Well, it's perfect timing. If anyone wants a book afterwards, there's a book that we wrote during COVID, second iteration. First one was P squared plus C equals 5, and now it's 6. But in fundamental terms, what it is, it's private media and public media working together. So another 2 Ps maybe to the old brand marketing piece. A creative bridge, consistency of creative, and 6 key fundamentals that every brand wants to achieve. Firstly, trust, attention, activation, purchase intent. But we've seen another piece that we've learned from public media working with private media is priming. And by priming your online or the cookieless future, which is within this book, by priming your activity in a public media channel, it actually helps you with your declining click-through rates and decline in awareness in a private media. So we see that, but the good news is we can now activate out of home programmatically or traditionally. Mm-hmm. So, have it across all ethnic audiences, gender, sexual preferences around the UK, targeting that, and then use us as the location experts to amplify further your digital message in a programmatic manner. But we mustn't make the fundamental mistakes of what other programmatic channels made in the past, we've got one thing that's, I believe, is maybe a positive to us. We've already got that trust. Public media has got that trust. But it's now how we amplify it further. I mean, we're deeply excited. I mean, that long tail piece is very interesting to us. Example, ASOS did a campaign with us recently. It's not a new brand, but they didn't do a lot of branding activity. Programmatically served a campaign in the summer, and they gained 1% market share. For ASOS to grab 1% market share, it's a big statement on intent. I don't know all the details, but come and get this book afterwards or ask us about it. It's really valuable.
Dallas will sign it, even though he wasn't an author. All right, well, let's talk about the pandemic. We heard a lot of stats about how things have changed during the pandemic. Has the pandemic affected the way we should be seeing the fundamentals of brand marketing? Anyone like to go first on that? What has the pandemic changed in your world and the way in which you see brand marketing, the fundamentals of it?
He's looking at you, Joe.
Okay,
I will say no, right? So the biggest problem with the pandemic overall is that we stopped socialising with each other. And there are huge societal impacts that's had from our children, our teenagers, in terms of mental ill health. There's loads of stuff. But the world is the world, right? I fundamentally want to buy stuff because it makes me happy on a very simple play. I want a beer because I want to refresh myself. I want a mortgage because I want to extend my home. And we buy into brands very, very quickly for completely irrational reasons. We'd like to think that, I go with the best mortgage. People don't. We know they don't. People go with the best savings product. Again, we know they don't. People choose brands because they feel like it's about trust. And that's becoming increasingly important. So, look, my view is we're only just starting to come back out from our caves, and we'll learn to socialise with each other. But I think in terms of the impact on brands, the only impact we're seeing is very, very clearly that there is a desire for brands to have more purpose. Brands need to show up and say, and I think when you ask me why are we losing the fundamentals of brand marketing, I think back in the day, brands recognised that they had a contribution to make to culture. Outdoor and traditional advertising has always been a part of that. So, if you think Coke, I don't think sugar, energy, water. I think Americana, I think freedom, I think lots of values. If I think about lots of the beer brands, again, they come with enormous cultural value and contribution to our society. And I don't think people consciously go, oh yeah, I love Coke, It just happens in the same way that TV just happens, in the same way that radio just happens. And so what I think is consumers, and again, I think they want to know what brands are doing. And we saw that we had a COVID tracker, a reputation tracker, and all the attributes that are around contributing to society, making a difference, things that are more collectively orientated became more accentuated during the pandemic. The question I don't know is whether they'll spring back to be more individualistic or not. But I doubt it. I think there will be for a long time. And I think if you look at the response to Boris's party, just to get political for a moment, I think that's an indication of the visceral anger, that fact that a lot of us decided to play by the rules and we've got a Prime Minister who lied to us about it. And I think regardless of what your political views are, that anger comes from that sense of we were all in it together. We've seen that in our own research. And I think brands, again, are being asked to make sure that they're responsible in the way that they show up.
I'm going to come back to the politics in a bit. Don't worry about it, guys. We will come back to the politics. So just, has anyone else got anything to add there that you think the pandemic is important to talk about in terms of how we've changed?
I think, obviously, it's accelerated the use of digital technology, right? So, I think we obviously saw during the pandemic more and more people spending time online. And like you say, as we start to come out of our shells and go back into the real world, what I think we'll start to see is more of a convergence, and you touched on, Metaverse and outer world. Metaverse will simply be the conversion of virtual and real world. And I think more people are open to that convergence. And for brands, that's a huge opportunity, an opportunity to be creative, an opportunity to think really differently around how their brand appears. I think it is absolutely going to change how brands show up.
I thought you were talking about Essence Mediacom for a second there when you talked about convergence. We won't go into that. That's a different panel going on in a different room. Ali, anything to add, or should we go on to another tricky question? And Dallas? Yeah, all right, cool. So So, right, this is quite a controversial one. What are the other reasons that we're losing sight of the fundamentals of marketing? So, awards, career ambitions, media complexity, or brains and mavericks leaving the industry? Or is it about stereotypes staying in and us not kind of disrupting ourselves? All those things were mentioned in the pre-call that we had, all right? Who would like to go first and, slag off our industry?
I don't think we should slag off our industry. We're an amazing industry, but we need to evolve and do things differently. Make it accessible to everyone. Media for all. They're doing an amazing job, but let's support it. We've all got a responsible choice, be it sustainability, be it people, be it real-world experiences, autonomy. I think brand marketing is a bit like hybrid working. What's the best of both worlds? Right? And I think our sector is amazing. Right? And everyone needs us. Brands need us. Right? Hopefully they don't need digital as much as they're currently spending in digital and they spend more in out of home. But fundamentals is we have got an amazing industry.
So just on that, because I'm being deliberately provocative there, but we do know that the performance has been outweighing the brand, marketing for quite some time. And that has probably been generated by short-term kind of needs, ambitions, by CEOs and CFOs, kind of like responding to that more.
Or longevity of the CMO.
Yeah, or longevity of the CMO. But there's also, we talked about in terms of whether is it lack of training, lack of kind of understanding the fundamentals, lack of kind of tenure by CMOs. Ali, would you like to say anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's human, and it's probably a bit of all of the things that you've mentioned. But I think the best thing that, at least within my area of marketing, brand marketing, that we can do is just offer training. I used to work at Diageo, and they have a very odd name. It's called Dweeb, but the Diageo way of brand building. And they invest so much in not just the consumer marketeers, but the shopper marketeers and everyone. So everyone has the same base of knowledge. And then it takes it to a place of, it's very easy to see the people who might be sort of attracted to the shiny things, the tactics, and it just grounds everyone on the same base of knowledge. And I think it adds a maturity to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fundamentals come down to, look, business is a creative endeavor, right? You create value in the economy when someone brilliant comes up with an idea. I cut my teeth at Mars Confectionery, and Forrest Mars was just a legendary kind of entrepreneur that, he came here with the Mars bar recipe and then saw that we really loved our animals. And he was like, I think we could sell these people some shit meat in a can. and hence was born two of the world's biggest pet food brands, Whiskas and Pedigree. And it's astonishing, no, people before that were going to their butchers and asking for offcuts and tripe. So it's ideas that drive our economy and our businesses forward, and marketers are owners of the customer voice to drive that, and that is the fundamentals. Digital, in my view, has created an illusion for people that aren't creative, that you can calculate and precisely get everybody. That I can turn up to person A and be brand A, and then turn up and be person B to brand B, and person C to brand C. And in conversations in my business, I'll go and chat to the mortgage department. We want to target everybody. No, we don't. I don't want to sell. We won't sell a mortgage to someone who can't afford a mortgage. So we don't want to target everyone. In fact, out of a 6-way segment, only 2 segments of those count for 87% of our mortgage book. And I'm like, all our marketing should be at these people and the attitudes where we can win as a brand. Now, that's not popular because everyone loves the word of Byron and all people are in the market for everything. But that's simply not my experience either as a consumer or a marketer. And so cookies and the end of cookies will end a lot of this illusion. I think today there's a headline to say that 30% of the inventory that Facebook are offering their customers, us as advertisers, is missold. It's not hitting the people of the interest category that we want to hit. And it's as inaccurate, it's just cheaper than outdoor and all the other mediums. And so for me, I think once that illusion goes, the fact that you can calculate or precise or be a trickster or be inconsistent isn't there. You go back to the last thing. If you talk about what a brand is in a very simple term in your early days, when you get really wanky about it, you say, oh, well, if the brand was a person, what kind of brand would it be? Now, it's not that you should be selling your brand that way. It's a way to try and manage your image. You're managing an image of an entity and a logo so that people get some outtake of it. If I start to behave in a certain way in this environment, and then you see me next week at another conference, and I behave completely different, and I completely contradict what I say, and then I turn up at another conference a week after that and say something different, you'll go, that Joe Goldberg's off his nut, it's completely inconsistent. and I think that's exactly the same with a brand. You'll lose trust in it. And to believe that you're not going to hit the same customer with weird and distinct messages and then feel slightly subconsciously, because our brain doesn't work consciously, something not right with that brand. That's the reality. And I think it's what the performance guys fail to get. There they go, it's cheap, it's free, and I get some sales. And actually building your base of trust and is the bit of stuff that's always hard to measure. And the tangibility, the intangibility of branding, I think, is what makes it difficult to win that argument in the business. But the ones that are focused on it are still the ones that are winning.
Okay, I promised I was going to ask some questions. And we've only got 4 minutes left, so we've got to hurry up. We've got a hand there. Can we get a microphone there, please? And while the microphone's getting there, I'm going to just ask that kind of slightly more political question. So, you've mentioned about how brands grow. Is the problem that we're all reading the same books, or chapters of the books, or summaries of books? The marketing people, everywhere, the agencies, as well as the CFOs, the CMOs, and are they all saying the same thing? So in terms of the reference to politics is, so Steve Harrison's got a book called Can't Sell, Won't Sell that's out, and his claim is that we're all a little bit too woke and a bit too left-leaning at the moment in industry, and there's not enough hard selling that's going on in terms of doing brand response, let's call it, which is about paying attention to brand, but also making sure that the thing sells. So are we, the more purposeful and more conscious kind of strategies becoming more fundamental, and should they becoming more fundamental? We mentioned community, we mentioned brands doing good. Should that be a new fundamental, or should we actually just, is this just something we should be ignoring, and we should just be actually just thinking about sales? Anyone got a quick opinion on that? And then we're going to have the question.
I was going to say, I think authenticity has to be a new fundamental, right? Like, look at the new economy brands, I'm sorry to mention Elon, given he's so topical. Essentially, he is the brand. The CEO is the brand, and I think it's because he's authentic and he says exactly what it is that he thinks. And I think authenticity absolutely will become a new fundamental.
And all I'd say is just very quickly. So, the first brand in this country was created in 1886, right? So brands aren't that old as a phenomenon in terms of actual registered trademarks. Brands and brand owners have always contributed to society. Jesse Boots in this country was a massive philanthropy. Dale Carnegie in America. These people, they put their business, their family name on the business, and that was the brand. And that brand was absolutely focused not just on making money, but also improving society. So if you go to Boots and you chat to Boots people, they'll say, we were here to democratize and make medicine and health available to the masses. And there is not a person in Boots, unless there's someone who's going, it's complete nonsense. But that's in their DNA. And I think the fact that we've been so sales-focused is a 1980s thing, not a forever thing.
We've got a countdown now. We want questions, please.
Dan Wunchiman, Head of Marketing for Ipsos Audience Measurement. Bringing together kind of what you've talked about, you touched a little bit about Metaverse, you talked a little bit about targeting, flipping a little bit what you said, Joe, sorry. Sorry. Don't slap me.
Get that mouth.
In terms of
name.
in terms of validity in what you're saying, in the metaverse, people have personas. So I'm a gamer. I am who I am. I have a different name. I tend to have blue hair, same muscular physique. But in terms of targeting people, what are your thoughts in terms of that? Given that consumers will have different kind of profiles, different ways. So how will you reach that, two targets that you were talking about, given that we don't necessarily know who they are?
Well, I would go back to the point about authenticity. I think you need to show up as you think you should show up, right? We should not pretend that we are somehow Monzo. We're not Monzo, we're Santander, right? And so we should show up as the Santander that we want to be and that we understand people relate to. And I think it only relays my point of exactly what you're saying. You're showing up as an alternative person in the metaverse. The only thing that we know is being consistent to who we are is likely to drive our relationships with our customers over the long term.
We've got seconds left. So there's a hand that went up there. Would you like to shout out your question?
Hi, Rishi from IS. Question for Ali. I'm just interested to know, because I'm not sure, is there been a change to the value of influencer marketing for brands like Stella Artois versus the traditional methods like TV? I guess the question I ask is, there's a page I follow on Instagram called Simply Pints. He's got 60 to 70 followers, 60 to 70,000 followers. And he's running a World Cup of Pints in the summer. Stella are ranked #1. Would you want to be involved in something like that? Or do you not see any value? Or would traditional methods still be the same? I don't run that page, by the way, but...
He just gets a nice little backhander and a few pints in the post.
I think influencers always have a role. Again, it just depends on what you're trying to achieve, and then you go to the tactics and the best way that you can achieve your objective. I think with that particular influencer, we've just launched a new beer. So, there was no payment made there, but obviously it's good to give it to people who know about beer, because I think sometimes marketeers, we forget what we're in, and I'm in beer and making good beer and selling good beer. So that was why we worked with them in particular. But again, it just depends on what's your strategy, what's your objective, and then how's the best way to reach the people that you want to.
So we've come to the end of our time. I just want to finish with one final question, really, which is just probably just a very quick answer. So if marketing is about finding an edge and being distinctive, does that mean that the fundamental thing is to break conventions and disregard fundamentals? That sounds quite metaversey in its question.
Can you say it again?
What I mean by that is, we're talking about the fundamentals of marketing, but marketing's about being distinctive and cutting through and breaking conventions. So do we have to sometimes deliberately not follow the fundamentals? Are the fundamentals there to be broken for successful marketing campaigns?
Well, I think I would say, just very quickly, I never think there's any harm in trying stuff. I think, who would have thought chucking a bunch of multicoloured balls down a hill in San Francisco would do for Sony what it did at the time, or a gorilla in a costume for Cadbury's. I think trying stuff is never going to hurt your brand. There's just an opportunity cost. So I think I'd say we shouldn't sweat it as much as we do.
I'd say experimentation is exactly what we need to be doing to evolve brand fundamentals. We will only grow as brands when we experiment and understand new behaviours.
I think there's a science and an art to marketing. I think the science is proven, so then that's where the art comes in, and you just need to find a way of doing it in a better way.
Cool. Finally?
Yeah, oh, great. Plenty of time. No, I think we've all got a responsible choice to make, be it a brand or a consumer. I think we've got a massive opportunity, and, the fundamentals are going to evolve, not change. But I think if your business is only measured on success and you're not allowed to have failure, you'll never be a successful brand.
Thank you, everyone. We've got into slight overtime. Please do comment on the Twitter as well. We'd love to find out more opinions. Sorry we couldn't have too many more questions. But please, round of applause for the guests. Thank you.